giving voice to a more just and sustainable world since 1979. WMNF Tampa, where music, news, and culture collide.
WMNF's Tropical Heat Wave returns May 10th to the Cuban Club with an explosive lineup of artists from Cheo, the Black Honkies Band, Tribal Style, GA20, Chuck Prophet, and more. Dance under the stars, discover your favorite new band, and join thousands of music lovers for one epic night in Ybor City. Tickets at tropicalheatwave.org.
You are tuned to WMNF Radio 88.5 FM. This is the public affairs program called Community Speaks. And I'm your host, Patro Mabili. Today, we walk down her story lane, talking about the women in the Black Panther Party. Today is also International Transgender Day of Visibility. But first, the conclusion of the other moonshot, the story of the black aerospace engineers in Los Angeles who worked on the Apollo missions despite barely being allowed in the room. Antonius Rojitos talks to Joanne Higgins after the production. Last week, we started listening to a little-known history of black aerospace engineers. We listened to the story of Joanne's godfather, Charlie Cheatham. He had just been hired to work on the secret Defense Department weapons program called Hound Dog. Then, suddenly, he found himself being assigned to the Apollo rocket mission. He would be one of the three of the first black aerospace engineers who would be crucial in getting the United States to the moon. In this finale, we meet the two other engineers, Nathaniel Levert and Shelby Jacobs. So you want to keep it tuned for that history as the United States seed back at that time during the civil unrest in the 1960s. These three men in Los Angeles, they played a key role in getting the United States to the moon. And despite several stopgaps and hiccups, the moon landing is a monumental success, although many African Americans feel it's come at a cost to their progress. The discrimination Charlie, Nate, and Shelby faced at work finally makes it into government hearings, and the trio today reflect on their contributions to the space race, expressing their sense of pride and wonder, as well as unresolved wounds from the experience. And now, we're going to get to the conclusion of the other moonshot. You can write me, DJ at WMNF.org. And, of course, stay tuned. Later, we're going to hear more about the women of the Black Panther Party and about the International Transgender Day of Visibility, often simply the Trans Day of Visibility. So we're going to talk about all of that here on this March 31st, right here on WMNF. Community Speaks. Keep it tuned as we go to the other moonshot.
The moon is a great deal easier to reach than you realize.
Oh, sure, it's a cinch. Only 240,000 miles. Paved highway all the way and a gas station at every intersection.
Fuel is no problem, Woody. The engines do not have to blast all the time.
That's Woody Woodpecker, way back in 1950, explaining space travel in the Destination Moon science fiction movie. It was one of the first movies to speculate how we get humans to the lunar surface, but it plays like a NASA advertisement. In the Apollo years, the public airways were flooded with moonshot promotions. They made it look as easy as mixing Tang, a powdered orange drink astronauts took to the moon. Magazines like Life, Look, and Collier peered into the future and saw space. But when it came to the details of how we would get there, the goalpost was a little unspecific.
Go down in the vicinity of the moon.
Sensational. I'll back it to the hill. Here's my $2. Well, When do we start building?
If it were only that easy, the project was a rough sketch without specifics. With the Apollo mission, the company now had a whopping 16,000 employees in the Space and Information Systems Division alone. A company promotional film called Fields of the Future proudly showed off its rapid expansion.
For it has been a combining of the efforts of many people in many kinds of jobs that has lifted North America from yesterday's alfalfa field to the more complex fields of electronics and manned aerospace vehicles.
In Downey, where the plant grew so big that you had to take a bus from one building to another, there were a few more black engineers. In 1962, Nate Levert was hired to work on the second stage rocket.
You want to get up?
How are you doing?
I am so well. It's so nice to meet you.
Nice meeting you.
I'm so excited. Tell me how you met Charlie. How did you meet Charlie?
I was in building 2, and I had never met Charlie. And then somebody said, hey, boy, Charlie Cheatham bust some guy upside the head. And I said, what? And he said, yeah, the guy told Charlie the best thing you can do for me is shine my shoes. Then Charlie let him have it.
Word spread quickly that Charlie had given the white guy a black eye.
And so what I did, I went and got on the bus. I want to see this eye.
It would be a few more years until Nate met Charlie in person.
So
Yes, ask me some questions. Because I've spent a lot of time asking you questions. So
yeah,
I met Nate for the first time a few years ago. He was wearing a black polo with black slacks. He's bald now, with a full salt and pepper beard. He towered over me at 88 years old. He took a seat at his dining room table, his daughter Regina listening from a chair in the corner. He's got a generous smile. Nate grew up in Alabama, and ever since he was a little kid, he dreamt of flying.
I caddied on the golf course, and one of the guys, there was an all-white guy, no black guys playing. He was a pilot, and I talked to him about flying and all that stuff, but he wouldn't give me a flight.
But some old white guy wasn't going to crush Nate's dream. As a teenager, Nate would ride a friend's bike 15 miles to a small airport with a single landing strip.
They had a little airport there, and I sat outside the fence and watched him take off. It just stuck inside of me.
After high school, Nate joined the Air Force. He lobbied to get into air traffic control, where there was a few other black airmen. Just before his 4-year term was up, Nate got a pass to travel.
And I came down to Los Angeles and said, man, California's all right. And
yes, tell me, what was your impression?
Oh my goodness. It was so spread out. I said, boy, look at that.
Nate wanted to go to college. He had stellar grades, but his segregated school in Alabama didn't offer any math beyond geometry. An Air Force colleague had pulled strings to get him into college in Long Beach. Nate excelled in school. After graduation, he got his first job working on a vent system for the Thor missile at McDonnell Douglas, a defense contractor in Culver City. The project was a precursor to GPS. He hadn't been there a year when he heard JFK address Congress. Inspired, he applied for a job at North American Aviation.
When they got that contract, I said, I'm gone. I'm going to get over there. I'm going to work on this. And I did. I got hired in.
10 years after watching the planes come in and out of that small airport in Alabama, Nate arrived in Downey for the first day at North American. He sported a prominent mustache and a patterned tie.
I was walking in there, and all the rest of the people are walking in also. I said, well, here we go. I'm going to work on this thing, and we're going to go to the moon.
Nate sat down at his desk in the bullpen. It was a field of white shirts and ties. The desks were lined up like rows of dominoes. Fluorescent lights hung above. It was loud. The layout was meant to foster communication. For the most part, it was just distracting. He would never say that, though. He carried with him the lessons you learned growing up in the segregated South. Keep your head down. Don't ruffle feathers. Nate was assigned to a group working on the second stage rocket engines, the ones that kick in once the rocket reaches the upper atmosphere. They were on a gimbaled thrust system. That means the engine swiveled in all directions. The engine movement changed the trajectory of the rocket. But there was a problem.
Our engines gimbal. If they tie down up here, they go back and forth. If it goes so far, it could hit the structure.
Basically, if the guidance and control team made too sharp a turn, the engine nozzle could strike the rocket's fuselage. Nate tried to solve the interference problem by making something called a free body diagram. These are illustrations that engineers use to show the guidance and control team where the rocket is going. His work showed they needed to limit the gimbaling range of the engine. Basically, limit how far the engine swiveled, which in turn changed where guidance and control could steer the rocket.
I did a free body diagram for him. Said, hey, that's what I think it is, and you need to strengthen this over here so it can't go that direction.
He presented his illustration to a colleague.
And he took that, and all of a sudden it was gone. And I don't know what happened to it, but all of a sudden, problem went away.
His skillfully rendered drawings solved a potentially life-threatening problem. His work disappeared. Nate learned about what happened months later from a colleague.
He says, Nate, didn't you do this engine interference issue? And I says, oh, yeah, I guess they're going to do something with that. He says, they already did something with it.
A white man getting all the credit for a black man's work isn't unheard of. But Nate was disappointed.
That's when I learned that I'll speak to the proper people about something that I've done. And so it was a lesson.
There are two kinds of lessons black engineers learned at North American Aviation. First, they learned how to take a dream like going to the moon and turn it into something real with hard work, ingenuity, and engineering smarts. Second, and this was the much harder lesson, Charlie, Nate, and Shelby had to navigate the gauntlet of racism at the same time.
I was prepared for it coming out of Alabama. I spent 19 years in Alabama, so I know what they do. He said, oh, got to call you a derogatory name. Oh, well, did he shoot you? If did he hang you? He didn't do that. Well, then you got away clean.
Basically, if bad things happen, you should feel lucky that you got through it alive. When Nate was 14, he and a friend were hired to salvage wood from an abandoned house.
We're going to pull the nails out of the lumber and throw it on the back of the truck and fill it up. And that was full, so it was, then we're going to leave. It was about, midway between us and Tuscaloosa. We were on the back on top of the lumber, and the three men, white men, was in the cabin of the international pickup.
Nate and his friend Cornell were in the woods, isolated. He saw these white guys in a truck.
And then Cornell said, look at that. And I looked over there, and here's this man hanging from a tree. And what are you going to do? I looked up and I said, boy, poor guy. what did they do that for? And and right away he says, you know what, if they stop, you run that way and I'm going to run this way. So we planned to get out of there, but they didn't stop. We kept going. But that's something you live with. You know, in school they used to talk about all that, and then the men, a lot of those men out there had experienced a lot of stuff. So they just tell you, stay in your place. And then you stay in your place, you might make it.
So in his work life, Nate minimized the real discrimination he went through after experiencing much worse. He swallowed it down. He focused on the thrill of engineering, of doing the thing he loved. That was his path. Then, on Nate's very first day at North American, Shelby Jacobs walked in. And Shelby, he showed Nate a completely different way to be.
He walked around like he was all free. I still had this Alabama thing on top of me. And Shelby said, they told me I was free, so I'm going to act free.
All my career, the question was there, who do you think you are?
That's Shelby, the third member of our crew. We will meet him next time.
We're listening to The Other Moonshot here on Community Speaks. So lesson
is the conclusion of episode 1 of The Other Moonshot. The podcast series has been in the works for years here at LAist Studios, and we're so excited to now be able to share it with listeners. To hear more about what was involved in the making of the series, I sat down with the host and executive producer, Joanne Higgins. We started off talking about how she connected with Nate Levert and Shelby Jacobs, the two colleagues of her godfather, Charlie Cheatham. Shelby, Joanne told me, was very willing to talk about his experiences. But Nate took some convincing. She explained what his hesitation was.
That it was a long time ago, and no one would really be interested in what he did in the 1960s.
But of course, you were very interested.
Yes, and I had to convince him. I really did. It took a couple of months for me to get him to finally concede.
When did you first know that you wanted to tell this story?
When my godfather had ended up going to the hospital for just something minor, and I went to visit. And while I was there, a colleague of his came by, and they started talking about working together. And I realized I had not, they were saying things that I wasn't familiar with.
Like what?
What it was like being at Cape Canaveral, how they had to, Charlie was talking about sending his friend Roland down there, and how it was difficult because they were Black and Roland was in charge. They didn't really want to listen to what Roland had to say. So they were just talking about how there were all these instances like that during their whole careers. Yet they have these really wonderful, influential positions. And I just wasn't aware that that happened for them.
And I'm assuming since he's your godfather, growing up, you knew he worked in space, but maybe it hadn't clicked when you were a kid, just what a big deal that was.
It didn't click when I was young. The only thing that clicked for me when I was young was the fact that he wore a suit to work, a suit and tie. And my father wore a uniform. And so I knew there was some huge difference there, but I didn't know what it was. But of course, later on, as I got older, I learned that he worked in aerospace.
And I don't think people think of how big aerospace is here in Southern California, how influential it is people obviously always think of Hollywood as associated with Los Angeles, but there are more space workers in Southern California than there are people in the entertainment industry.
Well, what I learned in my research is that there are two industries that really made LA what it was. They both have to do with stars.
Right, yes.
Yeah. One's the film industry, and the other is the aerospace industry.
And so when you first approached Charlie about the idea, what was his reaction?
Well, Charlie and I have been talking for years. We just talk about all kinds of stuff, politics, everything. So when I suggested that I wanted to tape him, he was fine. He was like, okay, this is just more of a continuation of what we do. And it became such a regular thing that before we'd even start the conversation, he'd say, is the tape going? So he was really, it was very easy to get him on board because he liked sharing his experiences about life anyway. That's what he'd always done with me. So that was a no-brainer.
And was there always this sense that you were going to be correcting the narrative, as you say in the first episode, about the history of aerospace?
I did not know that when I first started. But as we talked more, I started to realize that the conversations that Charlie and I had seemed to really enliven him and fortify him. And then I started to uncover through the conversations that he had some things that he needed to get off his chest and talk about with his colleagues.
That was Joanne Higgins, host and executive producer of The Other Moonshot. We'll hear more about the challenges that Shelby, Nate, and Charlie faced and the different ways they coped in the upcoming episodes. Thanks for joining us on this special broadcast of The Other Moonshot. You can also listen to The Other Moonshot wherever you get your podcasts or on LAist.com. That's LAIST.com. This has been The Other Moonshot from LAist Studios and APM, American Public Media.
And I look forward to bringing Shelby's story to you. Shelby Jacob, who was the third aerospace engineer, black aerospace engineer that was crucial in getting us to the moon. And you don't want to miss Public Affairs tomorrow on Tuesday here at WMNF. You are tuned right now to Community Speaks. I'm your host, Patro Mobili. But tomorrow, after Democracy Now! At 9 o'clock, starting at 10 o'clock, the Tuesday Cafe comes your way with Sean. We're going to hear a debate in the Florida legislature about a bill to lower the age to purchase rifles to 18. Plus, Sean will speak with a demonstrator who protested against Elon Musk at a Tampa Tesla dealership. And at 11 o'clock Tuesday, we'll hear a talk about environmental justice by Maria Lopez Nunez. And at noon, Wide Awake America is going to be hosted by Nadine Smith. And of course, at 1 o'clock will be The Scoop, updates, news that's produced right here at WMNF. Today is International Transgender Day of Visibility. It's an annual event dedicated to celebrating transgender people, raising awareness of discrimination faced by transgender people, and acknowledging their contributions to society. The first International Transgender Day of Visibility was held on March 31st, 2009, and has since been spearheaded by the United States-based youth advocacy organization Trans Student Educational Resources. And so, looking at the history, this event was created by transgender activist Rachel Crandall Crocker of Michigan in 2009 as a reaction to the lack of LGBTQ plus recognition of transgender people, citing the frustration that the only well-known transgender-centered day was the Transgender Day of Remembrance, which mourned the murders of transgender people, but did not acknowledge and celebrate living members of the transgender community. President Barack Obama and Vice President Biden first acknowledged this day for the transgender community. However, at that time, no proclamation was signed. And I believe that happened later in 2014. So today we are recognizing the Transgender Day of Visibility and this moment of backlash, racist and homophobic backlash, and anti-trans. We've been seeing that politics, and we've seen it replicated state by state, especially in red states, including this state. And so it's a fight, and there are people who are trying to tell, we know that red states and the Republicans have turned their backs on the other, and that was a group, since they're only considered 1% of the population, that was an easy target to otherize. And so we here at WMNF, we do not throw the transgender community under the bus. So we're recognizing that today. We also, here on Community Speaks, we recognize women of the Black Panther Party. Here on this last day of Women's History Month, we will hear part of a documentary on the women in the Black Panther Party. So we get familiar with names like Kathleen Cleaver and Elaine Brown, these historic women who were very vocal, visible, and brought some great ideas to the party and to society. And so we're going to listen to a portion of that story. But keep it tuned. You are tuned to Community Speaks here on WMNF Tampa.
Women, according to Chairman Bobby Seale, played an active part in the Black Panther Party for self-defense from its inception. Prominent Panther women include Erica Huggins, Kathleen Cleaver, Assata Shakur, Elaine Brown, and J. Tarika Lewis, also known as Madalaba, the first female member of the Black Panther Party, who participated in the first armed observation of the police. Elaine Brown, chairperson of the Black Panther Party, became one of its most powerful women and served as party leader from 1974 until the party disbanded in 1977.
Elaine Brown joined the Panthers in Los Angeles. In 1974, she became the party chair and brought the party into mainstream politics. The Panthers ran solid campaigns for mayor, city council representative, and other offices in Oakland, California. Brown also brought more women into prominent positions within the party. Now residing in Brunswick, Georgia, Elaine Brown is an accomplished musician, and some of her music is featured in this set.
The following excerpt is from an interview of Elaine Brown by Larry Bensky at KPFA Radio in Berkeley, California, in December of 1972. Elaine Brown speaks about the 1969 murder of Black Panther Fred Hampton in Chicago and the evolution of the Panther Party.
He is a hero, he walks with night, his spirit's beauty, his soul is right, his name is man, his face is black, and he would die for you to get your freedom back. He lives with danger, he lives with fear, he knows of chains, that's how he came here. His life is hard, you know the facts, yet still he died for you to get your freedom back. When will you decide to know him, to show him that you understand? It's the least that you can say to the man as he passes your way. You tell him easy, you said behave, and yet you can't see that you're a slave. He asks your help, no answer back to a man who died to get your freedom back. When will you decide to know him, to show him that you understand? It's the least that you can say to the man as he passes your way. You tell him easy, you say behave, and yet you can't see that you're a slave. He asks your help, no answer back to a man who died to get your freedom back.
With me here in the studio tonight, as we've been doing a memorial thing to Fred Hampton, whom I knew only very little, having met him twice, once in Chicago at the time of the trial, the conspiracy trial in which Bobby Seale was, of course, involved, and then actually before that, having met him once, or after that, met him once in Berkeley when he came to speak here on a program. But with me here in the studio is Elaine Brown, who is the person you've been listening to singing, and she's with the Black Panther Party. In fact, I think you're Minister of Information, is that correct?
Well, we've tried to eliminate the title business, so I'm a member of the party. So.
All right, I said it right the first time, and you're here. What do you remember about Fred Hampton, Elaine?
Well, I think the primary, the most beautiful part of Fred Hampton, and probably the most lasting memory that anyone will have who met him personally, was his real enthusiasm and his real love for the masses of people, black people and poor people in general. Fred's enthusiasm in that area was manifested in his real dedication to service to the people in whatever form that would take, whether it would be in the form of giving service in his day-to-day life, or in fact giving his life. I don't think that Fred hesitated at all, and this was a real part of Fred Hampton that many people would look at a person and say, well, does he really mean that? And when you know Fred Hampton, then you knew that he really meant it, that there was no way that the law enforcement agencies could continue to allow Fred Hampton to speak out in whatever manner they would choose, because Fred Hampton represented not only the black community, but really the needs and the desires of all poor people, and he was capable of articulating those needs and desires, and capable of working in every way possible to see to it that we really would receive the things that we need and want.
He was definitely what I would call a very heavy, charismatic figure. The time he came here to Berkeley, he gave a talk in a small hall on the University of California campus. And he mentioned during that talk that it was this had been the first time in his life that he'd been outside the state of Illinois. He was only 21 years old at the time of his death. And he made one analogy that I'll never forget. He said something about there's two kinds of people in the world. There's thermometers and thermostats. Thermometers are people who just register whatever temperature it is. If it gets hotter, they see the little red mark go up, well, so it's hotter. If it goes down lower, it's lower. But then there's other kinds of people, the thermostats. When the thermostat reaches a certain level, something triggers off. And he was trying to get people in that audience to be thermostats. Well, I don't know with how much success. He also, when I saw him in Chicago, outside the courtroom where Bobby Seale and the other conspiracy defendants were on trial, he was talking about Judge Hoffman, who was the judge who since became very famous. And he was pointing out at some length, in fact, naming names of all the people that Judge Hoffman had sent up year after year after year without line one appearing in the newspapers or any publicity on the television, particularly black people. And he thought it very ironical that at this particular trial, finally, Judge Hoffman's clear incapacity to be on the bench was being exposed. And he was talking to newsmen about that. And the amazing thing was, although he was a major figure in the Black Panther Party, which then was quite large and strong, most of the people, most of the newsmen, even the television and radio people covering the trial had never heard of him. Never heard of him. And when I went back to look up in newspapers today to see what had happened on the anniversary of his death the last 2 years, and also check out some of the details of the case, the Chicago papers still don't mention it much. Don't talk about it much.
Well, I think that in terms of Fred Hampton, the man, I think that the thing that Fred would have wanted as a person and as a member of our party, certainly I knew him and loved him very much because he was, of course, so really human. The thing that I think that is more important than that, though, than seeing it reflected in newspaper accounts, that is to say, especially the established newspaper accounts, is the fact that, of course, as Fred himself would say, the idea has carried. So even at the time, as you indicated, the Black Panther Party, per se, would have seemingly had more numbers or would have seemingly been stronger, as a lot of people would say now. The point is that the idea has become stronger and that it has generated into many things. For example, Fred was very active himself in the breakfast program in Chicago. And the concept of the breakfast program, or the free breakfast program, is certainly spread throughout the country. And the importance of that is not so much that children are getting fed more and more around the country because all kinds of groups and organizations and even the government itself has had to yield and make concessions to breakfast programs. But the important thing is that people have begun to realize that they have a right to eat, that they have a right because they are human beings to eat. And that's the thing that Fred expressed himself in speeches and in his life work. And that is that the idea cannot be killed and that the idea goes on. So whether you're talking about Fred Hampton or about the Black Panther Party in particular, the important thing is that the ideas have gone on, and they cannot wipe that away from the established press because the established press will not carry history; the people will. So I think that is the important thing that's happened, and the party has certainly been able, along with black people, with all black people and all poor people, been able to spread that concept throughout this country, where people thought at one time, just dogmatically almost, that in order for you to eat, you have to work, you have to do a certain number of things. And I think people are beginning to realize that there are some things that you must have in order to live every day, to survive every day, that you have to have, and that any time a person gives you puts a price on those things that you need, then they're putting a price on your life and have no right to do that. So I think that Fred Hampton's ideas, as well as the party's ideas, as well as the ideas among of other people, have been able to spread far beyond what was written in the Chicago press at the time of the trial or the time of Fred's death.
The murder of Fred Hampton and if I remember correctly, there were a few more incidents like that shortly afterward, but they did stop in the beginning of 1970. Do you think that there was a conscious policy? Is it the party's interpretation that there was a conscious policy that things had gotten too outrageous and they couldn't keep shooting people in their sleep and things like that? Or was it a change in the party's direction which caused the oppression to perhaps shift to a different direction?
Well, I don't think necessarily, absolutely any of those things. First of all, the party's direction hadn't necessarily shifted to any great degree in 1970. I think that the shift that many people referred to would more accurately be placed in 1971 and thereon. But I think that what happened is, I don't necessarily think also that there was a conscious effort on the part of the police and those people that are in power in this country to suddenly stop killing members of the Black Panther Party. For one thing, it was becoming not too beneficial because people were rallying around every time one of our members would be killed. There were more and more people becoming more and more sympathetic to the ideas of the party. And secondly, I think that they began to realize that that particular tactic at that particular time was not advantageous to their own continuation. And I don't think that they were necessarily as calculated enough and able enough to foresee that, because if they had, of course, they wouldn't have continued in that pattern for so long. I think that now, of course, the kind of silence that some people see is not at all silence, but in other words, a change in strategy and tactics on the part of the police and the power structure in general.
I'm going to ask you a personal question, and interviewing you before, I haven't had much success in getting response to these, but I'll try again. Are you personally and the people close to you as afraid for your lives as you were in those years? Because you were very heavily into the struggle then, as you still are. Do you personally feel as menaced?
Well, I feel probably more menaced, if you put it, menaced now than probably ever before. The thing that's interesting is that, you see, people, I think in 67, 68, and 69, in the years when probably some of the most overtly vicious things were happening to particular individuals in the party, people began to, view that as a real threat to every single person in the party. Certainly there was a threat in Los Angeles, which is the city in which I joined the party. We had the outstanding distinction of having more deaths in our chapter than all of the other chapters put together. And so I have attended many, many funerals, thinking that each time the next one would be my own. There was definitely that kind of immediate personal danger, or the feeling of that kind of impending danger. But as I say, and now, at this point, as you know, Bobby Seale and myself are involved in the electoral
farce.
Well, we're involved in the elections that will be coming up in April in Oakland, the city of Oakland here in California. And
Right, you're
I
running
think
for city
that what
council.
people have, people that call themselves revolutionaries or leftists, have a romantic view of what is dangerous and what isn't dangerous. Guns being pointed at your head in the open, or being pointed at your head from behind, from behind a door, don't have any less effect. In other words, when the bullets are fired toward your head, you'll still be dead, you know. I think that there is certainly a great deal of danger involved in this election, because the real possibility of Bobby Seale becoming mayor of this city, and of Elaine Brown becoming the city of Oakland, that is, and Elaine Brown becoming a city councilwoman, has presented the kind of threat to the power structure that at this point is almost back against the wall about, because we have participated and built a people's machine throughout the years of the various ways in which we've involved ourselves in struggling in the interest of the people. We have built up that kind of machine, and particularly in the city of Oakland, where we have established a base. I think that the power structure of Oakland, which is an interesting power structure, and certainly obviously part of the large U.S. power structure, which is really in control of the world, if you want to go into all of that, that I think that they are in real fear that we will win, and in real fear that in winning we will expose information, because again, that's the key thing. If people know things, then of course they'll be able to act on those things. And I think that if we become the tools through which people can get more information about their lives and how they can concretely implement their needs and desires, I think this is a true threat, and I think that this has presented probably a greater threat from on the part of the party per se, in behalf of the people, to the power structure, than probably any other particular thing that we've been involved in so far. So that certainly I feel personally I'm not looking forward to any type of dangerous thing, or not looking forward to getting killed, anything like that. But certainly I see that possibility, and I have apprehension about it, to say the least. So that does exist in our lives, but of course it has existed for so long that it becomes almost second nature.
The Oakland City Council is a...
Excuse me, I want to say one thing about
Sure.
that. You played part of a tape that Fred himself had made, and he said in there, he said, you know, I'm going to die for the people. And Fred used to say very often he didn't intend to die in a car accident or fall down on the ice, or did he intend to die in a plane accident, that he knew that he would die for the people. Huey Newton has written a book called To Die for the People, and the same concept has always existed in our party. The only difference is that we know that we're all going to die, you know, anyway. You know, we already know that by the fact of birth. So that it's just a question of whether you will die for the people or die for the reactionaries. And so that's always a conscious, we're always conscious of that, and so it becomes sort of an aside to the things that you know you have to do, because the individual is still not beyond all of the people that have already died and suffered for so long. So we're only talking about being instruments that will change things, so that people won't have to talk about dying and can talk more about living.
Brown Lane, something I meant to ask you about before. Your record, Seize the Time, which we played a couple of cuts off, is now, what, 3 years old?
Yes, I think it is.
What happened to your music?
As a matter of fact, we're getting ready to do another album of music. Of course, music, in our case, is part of a way of communicating with people, the things that we want to talk about specifically. That is to say, the party.
You wrote most, if not all, I think all. Did you write all?
All.
You wrote all the songs on that album. What would be the possibility of writing songs as a council candidate? Songs of council. No, I'm serious. Songs of council struggle that you could unite the people around, and be not only unique to have somebody from the Black Panther Party on the Oakland City Council, but a musician as well.
Well, of course, the songs themselves, I always say that they're written by the people, because people have a tendency to talk about art in some abstract way, and everybody gets kind of esoteric and above everything when they speak about what they've written and what they've, you know, what oils they've done and this kind of thing in the area of art. And I think that, of course, art is derived from what people do, and it's really a reflection of what people do. In other words, I haven't created anything. I've just made a statement about what is. Maybe I've made some suggestions about what is, and that's what we've hoped to do. But the people wrote the songs, and they will continue to write songs because that's what the people are, you know. And all you have to do is kind of just look around, look on the streets, just walk through the streets, and people are constantly doing things. Emory Douglas, who, as everyone knows, is an artist, draws very beautifully. He kind of sometimes sits and looks out the window at people and draws the back page of the Panther paper just from the people in our community, because the people are the art and the art is the people. In other words, it's just that we are the instruments that kind of tell the story and chronicle the events. So certainly as a city council representative, it won't be an exclusive thing to do one thing and not be therefore able to do another, because I'll always be, as long as I can, among the people, and therefore they'll always be saying things and singing songs and doing all the things that the people do anyway.
We originally started out talking about Fred Hampton, and we seem to have gotten into a lot of other things, which I suppose is appropriate because little I knew Fred Hampton, I'm sure he wouldn't want us sitting around here telling eulogy stories and crying about his death. I'm sure he'd much rather we were talking about positive things that people were doing.
I think you're right, especially in the case of Bobby Seale. As you probably know because you were in Chicago, Bobby and Fred had a kind of particular closeness, above a lot of other things. And I think that Fred would be very happy today to know, first of all, that Bobby has been rescued by the people from the hands of the pigs from New Haven, and is back at the home base here and building a new base and building something new and more progressive than Fred had known at the time that he was alive. I think that that's one thing that he would be very very happy personally about. They were very close, as I say, and Fred had a real love for Bobby. Some of the charisma that you spoke about in terms of Fred was his listening to Bobby Seale speak and watching, because Bobby, of course, has the same kind of real and genuine love for everybody. I mean, he's always, wanting to, people that are hungry. Before the Black Panther Party, I met a brother the other night who told me that Bobby had taken him into his home and because he didn't have any place to stay, and that was on 2 nights after he was married to Artie Seale. So that's the kind of person he is, and I think that in that kind of personal thing that we're talking about in terms of Fred Hampton, that even in that sense, I think it's apropos, his memory, to talk about what Bobby Seale is doing, what the party, of course, in general is doing, and what the people are doing.
Would also be the Black Panther Party, for some strange reason, because there's a lot of news articles that appear in the newspaper, the Black Panther, that never get touched by the straight press at all. For some reason, this past week, they decided that it was time to break a story that you were trying to patch up the differences between the Eldridge Cleaver faction and the Huey Newton faction. What do you have to say about that?
Well, I don't think that there was a question of patching up, because that was, of course, that's already indicative of the line that they blew in the first place. And when I say they, of course, I mean, again, the establishment, those people that are in control of the money and therefore the media and everything else. What we were saying when we said that justice for Eldridge Cleaver is what we would say for anyone, and we wanted people to be clear that the Black Panther Party, because of the ideological differences that we had with Eldridge Cleaver, does not mean that we will say that Eldridge therefore deserves to be in the hands of the pigs. Eldridge is still part of the oppressed community, as he has been, and he still deserves a trial. If he's done something that is wrong, then the people will have to decide that. If there's a trial to be had, then the people will have to have that trial. But we say that we will stand between Eldridge and the power structure, just like we would between any other person in the power structure, to see to it that they really receive justice, and not pig justice, not the power structure's form of justice, but the kind of justice that only the people can mete out. So that regardless as to ideological differences, we're saying that Eldridge Cleaver does not deserve to be thrown back into a jail, and that his appeal to come back into the United States and receive a fair trial should certainly be heeded.
Do you have any information indicating that that's what's going to happen?
I haven't any information on it at all, no.
the Black Panther Party active in further investigations in support of the people who were involved in that day at San Quentin Prison?
Oh, of course. Of course, as you know, or maybe you don't know, Johnny Spain is a member of our party, as well as Hugo Pinell. Those are two of the people that are part of what is now called the San Quentin Six. Six brothers who are on trial for, well, literally they're charged with murder and attempted murder and all kinds of course, the usual charges, conspiracy charges. Interestingly enough, and even from a legal standpoint, they have not been charged specifically with having killed anyone. They have been charged with conspiring to carry out certain acts, even though they may not have carried out those acts. They can suffer, and now, of course, since Californians in general, those people who went to the polls, that is, voted to have the death penalty maintained in the state of California, then I certainly think that the San Quentin Six are faced with the possibility of being convicted and getting the death penalty, and our party has been working very hard to try to avert that. By the way, I would like to say, just for the people who are in Oakland, since we're running in the city of Oakland, the Oakland voters overwhelmingly voted to defeat Proposition 17. And so I think that even though there were other counties and other cities of people who went to the polls, and of course that doesn't mean everyone, and people get some sort of an idea that by electoral vote you're talking about every single person. But those people who went to the polls, unfortunately, in California were not educated enough as to what kind of barbarism exists in legally saying that that the state has a right to another person's life.
I'm glad to hear you mention that about those who went to the polls, because one of the things I talk about a lot about the election is that the percentage of eligible people who voted in that election was really quite small. I'm talking about the presidential election, and even less on the propositions in California. What do you, as somebody who's running for office, how are you going to overcome that? I think you would find, if you investigated it, that fewer than 50%, and probably a lot fewer than 50% of the potential eligible voters in North Oakland participated in that election, and it's likely to be less in April.
I don't think that it will be less. I think that, in fact, we'll see probably the greatest voter turnout ever in the April elections. Of course, you realize that the Oakland election has become a national issue by virtue of the fact that the Black Panther Party is involved in it, particularly Bobby Seale. So that I think that even that alone, that point alone will cause more people to at least be conscious. Oakland elections, just as you mentioned, you went to the Oakland City Council and saw a group of the most conservative, to put it mildly, men sitting there deciding things about people's lives in Oakland. Oakland elections in general have almost gone unnoticed in terms of city elections by the people in Oakland.
Going down historic lane, her story, that was an interview by Elaine Brown. Elaine Brown was a member of the Black Panther Party, and just having some historical perspective. She ran for office in Oakland, California years ago, but today she's the chief operating officer of World Enterprises, which she founded in 2014. She left the Black Panther Party. There was some issues of sexism, and she mentioned also in that interview Eldridge Cleaver. Eldridge Cleaver did return to the United States. He joined the Black Panther Party before being kicked out in 1971, but he did return. He faced some charges for a shootout in 1968, but he returned to the United States in 1975. And there's a lot to learn about that particular history, but this was a focus on the women of the Black Panther Party. So it was important to understand their history as well in this male-dominated party. We were listening to a lot of stories today here on Community Speaks, and hopefully next week we'll take your telephone calls again, but we're sharing historical stories just to put our country and this country's history in perspective, especially women's history. We talked earlier about today being Transgender Day. I mentioned that was no proclamation signed in 2009, but in 2021, President Joe Biden did sign the proclamation for a Transgender Day of Visibility, which is today. And We got some emails. There's some people who said this is just wrong that on the last day of Women's History Month it's Transgender Day of Visibility, and that's just wrong because that's another example of men holding women back. But why can't it just be about solidarity? But this has been Community Speaks, and we'll talk more about all of those issues going forward. But we want to go ahead and get on out and make room for It's the Music Monday. We're going to get back to the music. Of course, join us tomorrow. There's going to be more public affairs coming your way. And as I mentioned earlier, there's going to be a great discussion on the Tuesday Cafe with Sean Canan. But right now, we're going to get some information from the scoop, and then we get back to the music. This has been Community Speaks. My name is